So hold up, that horse, which was an odd character ever since they really started focusing on it, but a part of me always was like, well, you know, sometimes to your turn you could just have a weird eccentric character even if it is a horse. But seemingly they just confirmed that that horse isn't just a random horse that seemingly is attached to Fushi. It is heavily implied that Beth's grandma is the said horse. I mean, at first when the horse kind of came to save the day and it fell to its seemingly death, I was like, what the hell's going on here? Because you're making the horse seem so important. But when you see it heal itself and the man in black says, I made it from your flesh, and we know how the Fays operate, and if the Fae willingly wants to go into a body, it can do so. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's just what happened. People might want to argue it's not confirmed, you know, someone hasn't explicitly said it, but when you're hinting at the exact same behavior as the horse in the water with the fish, she did the same thing. I mean, I think we all know where that horse is supposed to be relating to, and that's a fantastic reveal. Now, I do got a full live reaction available on the Patreon, definitely had my mind racing, and I was second guessing myself for a bit there. I was like, oh, maybe I'm overthinking the whole horse bit, but no, it's such a brilliant reveal because here's the thing. Immediately, I was starting to picture two characters as the potential candidates prior to the fish scene, because there's two characters whose souls haven't been following Fushi. Now, granted, a lot of the souls that aren't most likely just passed on willingly, but when you start wondering about what the horse could be, there's only two characters that kind of made sense to me. One was our best old grandma, Purin, or Perona herself. Perona was honestly less likely in my opinion, but those are the only two that I could see wanting to help Fushi. But it makes so much more sense when they start hinting at and really putting the focus on her, because when we think of their time together, she was an old woman. There was times where she felt like she wasn't enough help to Fushi because she couldn't move around properly. In her dying years or dying months, right, she was bedridden. She was an old woman who felt like she was more of a burden than anything to Fushi. What would be the one thing that would be her best way to repay Fushi and to help Fushi for seemingly eternity? Well, a horse body that is made that, honestly, had the man in black just made a body out of nothing, I doubt there would have been a soul in there. But then again, you might be able to make the argument there's probably Fays all over the world, so any sort of animal might have ended up possessing it. But it's so brilliant because there's no way in hell the man in black would ever tell Fushi that the Fays can come back into bodies. But you put that bitch into a horse who can't talk. I mean, we can see why he would allow that to happen, because not only is someone like her loyal to Fushi, it's something that will keep Fushi safe. We're seeing it over the course of this episode how anytime Fushi's trying to lash out or act stupid, pulls him right back. The whole chomping of the head. It's just such a great reveal. And I love how even in this episode, Bond slips up because Fushi and him kind of butt heads and he's like, well, who are you to tell me not to do this? And he accidentally catches himself saying, you know, I'm just following the people who are with you more or less. And he catches himself and Fushi's like, what the hell are you talking about? You hit your noggin or something? But it's great to see that things are building up in a very great way. Yes, we lost like 5 forms in this episode, but all things considered, dealing with, I think they said prior to basically the time skip, because we see it go from night to day and there was 208 knockers. 5 forms isn't the worst thing ever, but it's also not the best thing ever either. The fact that Fushi is now on a training arc, all things considered. The man in black has given him something he didn't have before. He basically took and cut something out from him, and now Fushi can start to predict things similar to himself in terms of not being able to see, because he can look this way and realize that he took a piece of the rope behind him. So it's a pretty cool skill, all things considered, as he's just enjoying the new boat that he has with all these different things that will allow him to train and refine his skill set, as you have one of my favorite scenes in this season to date, which is when he's sitting with the horse and you see the other souls with him. I just love the fact that the bear is there. I love the fact that that bear became such a wholesome character, all things considered, given how ferocious it looked, but the fact that it is one of the most loyal spirits for Fushi, refusing to pass on and always being with them. Though I will say, I think one of the most shocking reveals outside of obviously the horse is the fact that, because my assumption was, if a knocker steals a form, the Fae, the soul, goes with them, because he can't transform back into the forms. A lot of people, myself included, are under the assumption that if, say, he made a body for Gugu, and Gugu's soul went into it, he wouldn't be able to transform into Gugu anymore. So the fact that when a knocker steals a body, I was like, oh shit, you know, Gugu's Fae is no longer there. But we actually see it when Bond's looking, because Gugu's sitting with Fushi. So the fact of the matter is, even when the forms are seemingly stolen, it does seem like potentially the Faes are still sticking around. But then again, Maybe that's not exactly true. Maybe it's because he killed a bunch of knockers. He got those forms back, but the fact of the matter was they did have a conversation slightly before that where he was basically going over, do you recognize this person? No. Do you recognize this person? Yes. So to me, that's kind of what they were implying, but then again, it could just be something different there, but I'm still excited nonetheless. Like, I think it is obviously just a matter of time in Fushi's life. I do think I'm back on the train of when Bond eventually dies, that's when he'll know, because when you gain Bond's form, the ability to see the phase are most likely there as well. So it'll be very interesting to see the direction they're going, because all things considered, Fushi is a kid in a lot of ways. The reason I say that is despite being hundreds of years old, he never has really grown into an emotional maturity of someone his age at a first glance. If you see someone being 500 years old, shit, they got some old wisdom to it. But Fushi's just learning to handle emotions. Fushi's just learning to deal with so many things, and for the first time in a long time, he's starting to feel more mature than just someone who, you know, is either crumbling or lashing out in human ways, don't get me wrong, but it does feel like Fushi is still a learning kid, all things considered, and I think that's why it's so important to have characters like Best Grandma, or characters like Bond. I mean, this is hands down my favorite 2-Year Eternity season for one specific reason, and it's not just because Bond's an amazing character, and probably my favorite character I've seen in the show. It's the fact that they're letting characters stick around far longer and in return influence Fushi more and more and more. I mean, Bond and Fushi literally butt heads in this episode, but if you didn't have that kind of butting heads moment, Fushi would have ran into his death. I mean, to have characters legit care about him and be able to get through his thick skull at times, he is an immortal. Why should I listen to a human who's gonna die before me? You know, it's a bit of a temper tantrum, and understandably why he would get like that, but to have characters actually restrain him is exactly what he needs, and that's what makes this arc in this season so fantastic, that we're 9 episodes in and we're not slowing down the Bond journey or all these characters, and it really does feel like the knockers are one hell of a threat. Last episode getting the whole reveal that they view it as saving humans, releasing their souls. This episode, they're calling it a game. Like, what type of character is that? What type of creature is that? I don't know. It's far more frightening than just a simple beast running wild and killing, when it has that complex emotion of we're helping, but it's also fun to us. Like, it's so terrifying and so brilliant, but that's what I love about it. And I also really like that Kaku, just he is a descendant of Hayase, doesn't mean he's an evil bad character. The knocker in the arm is definitely something that needs to go, but I like the fact that Fushi generally cares for Kaku given what's everything that's happened with them, right? And I think that's what makes the emotional maturity and growth of the season so great. I do think he's underutilizing the lava, because as we saw when he initially saved Bond, he was in the bird form and he dropped the gas in order to knock everyone out. In theory, he could probably do a similar thing in his forms. I mean, obviously the bird got took from him, so couldn't do it in the moment, but if he was flying overhead and there was no one below him, he could probably just drop molten lava on those knockers. He lost Guyu's form, so he couldn't breathe fire anymore, and, you know, the amazing climbing tree abilities of March, but there's a lot of really interesting combinations, and just thinking about the arsenal he does have now, from lethal to non-lethal ways to deal threats, it's really interesting. But I mean, either way, I leave another episode. This is like just constantly mind-blown moments week after week. But let me know what you're feeling down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. Consider supporting the Patreon if you do want to see full live reaction to today's episode and other episodes I'm covering. As well, while you're there, you can also get video shoutouts like a few are about to get here. So we got Jaxo23, Migs021, and Lydia. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.